Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your host, Rios here. Welcome to another edition of In the Pain podcast. I'm joined by my co-host here, Mario. Hey, Mario, how's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. Last week I was making snow angels. All of a sudden this week I have to get my boat out because it's raining every day. I just don't understand. Well, why I understand this is Houston, so the weather's always going to be like this. And honestly, if it wasn't like this, I wouldn't feel at home. I wouldn't even feel normal.
I'd be confused. Like, if the weather doesn't change quick, what are we supposed to do? I mean, besides
Yeah,
summer,
what are we? Save us.
it's hotter than the seventh gate of hell every summer. But other than that, thank you guys for joining us. So we got a pretty action-packed episode this week for you guys. So a couple of our talking points are we're going to give you guys a quick recap of the games against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Boston Celtics, and the Atlanta Hawks. We're going to talk a little bit more about the emergence of Amen Thompson and much more right after our intro. Alrighty, guys. So it's been a pretty action-packed, eventful week for the Rockets. Our last episode, we were kind of going over the live score against the Cleveland Cavaliers when they were playing at home here in Houston, and then they faced them on that following Friday in Cleveland. So when they played last week, Cleveland was missing a couple of starters, but they were back for their game against them Friday. So a lot of the pundits they kind of picked the Cavaliers to win that game just based on their starters being back, Cleveland being at home, them being the number one overall seed in the NBA, well, in the East. But it was actually a pretty close game, and that game ended with the Rockets, defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers 135-131. So some of the top performers for that game was Alperen Sengun. He had 25 points and 8 rebounds. You had Jalen Green with 26 points and 4 assists, and Amen Thompson with a triple double, 23 points, 14 boards, and 10 assists. And we had little Mike Evans, who I call Fred VanVleet little Mike Evans because if you looked at them side by side, they look like the same person. But yeah, he also contributed as well with 20 points and 6 assists. So, Mario, give me some of your thoughts on that game.
Uh, well, I mean, honestly, the thing about the game. Talk about the emergence of Amen Thompson. Ever since he's been inserted into the starting lineup, the Rockets are now 9-2. So that just shows you that with him in the lineup, it's a different ball game. The Rockets are doing much better. You can see the past couple of games they've just been beating the top teams in the East, and one of the people that are leading that charge is Amen Thompson.
Yeah, because he brings it on both ends of the court. That's not something you see too much
Yes.
in today's NBA. You usually have guys that are great scorers, but they don't really provide that same effort on the defensive end. And he plays hard on both ends of the court. With Coach Udoka, he preaches, those guys playing hard on both ends. If you don't play defense, you're not going to play. And he came off the bench to start the year. A lot of people were hoping he would be in the starting lineup, and he's because of injuries, but also because of his effort on both ends of the court. Him and Tari Eason, they call them the Twin Terrors because they're 6'7" wings, but they're putting up boards. They are guarding guys taller than them and much larger than they are, and they're holding their own, which you typically don't see from guys their age and their size. And it's one of the reasons that the Rockets are a top 5 defensive unit in the league. Just that effort and those two players, going all out on both ends of the court and contributing where they can. And it's not just those two; it's a complete effort across the board. Like even guys that aren't known for the defense, like Sengun, he's in years past was somewhat of a liability on the defensive end, but he's stepped it up and he's putting forth that effort, and it's kept him in games where we saw him, being benched in the third or fourth quarter. Same thing with Jalen Green. They're really buying into the system, and they're really putting forth the effort
Yeah.
on the both ends of the court.
No, I agree with all of that. You know, one of the stats that I seen today was that the Rockets are actually leading the league in rebounds. So they're averaging, I think, over 48 rebounds per game. And so that, everyone knows that rebounds wins games. It's one of the key ways to win the game. The more you get the rebounds, the more you're able to put shots up. So, and also you take the ball away from the other team. So they're not going to have enough offensive possessions to score on you or more time. So right now, a lot of the stats of the Rockets are just improving. And, you know, they kind of remind me of like the Astros when they were probably, when they were at their lowest. They had the three, 100 loss seasons, and then they emerged all of a sudden. Now they're talking about World Series contenders, and that's kind of what I'm getting from the Rockets. The same way they had those 2-3 years that they were down, but now look at them now. They turned around to actually, building something. So that's kind of what I'm comparing it to. It's funny to see that, it's within the same city, different sports, of course, but you see it kind of like reenactment kind of type of deal.
Yeah, no, it's very similar vibes, as the kids say. Well, because with those Houston Astros, they overachieved a little bit in the early 2000s, but it was an older roster, and it got to the point where they had to blow it up. And the Rockets were in a similar situation. You had your superstar that left, just like with the Astros when Carlos Beltran left, kind of the beginning of the end of that, of that little run that they had. And little by little, they had to, basically move these pieces, try to rebuild. And yeah, you saw those 300 loss seasons, and the Rockets, they were, pretty similar. They were losing, 50, 60 games, and it was tough to watch.
Yeah, very tough.
Not just, as, for the fans of the team, but like just your casual basketball fan, for national pundits, like they got no love, and they were ridiculed, justly so, because it was, again, you went from having a team that was perennial contenders in the Western Conference Finals, probably the one team that was able to go toe to toe with the Golden State Warriors during their dynasty. Just going from that to this team, basically winning 20 games a season, being one of the worst offensive and defensive units, and then in just a short period of time, turning it around to being one of the top 3 teams, not just in the West, but in the entire league. Because we've seen teams tank, like the Philadelphia 76ers, the whole process thing. Their process
definitely.
And it's looking like that process never really came to fruition. They never really were true contenders to like actually compete for the Eastern Conference title, or being in the NBA Finals. Now, no one's saying that these Rockets are going to be in the Western Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, but this team, like the trajectory that they're on, it's a much more positive trajectory than anyone could have predicted a year ago, even.
Yeah, it's true. Earlier in the season, Charles Barkley was talking about, this Rockets team don't know how to play.
Yeah, they don't.
And now, more recently, he's like, "Hey, this team is putting it together." So, he's singing the praises of, Udoka and what he's doing with the team and how he sees the team coming together. So it's catching on nationally now. A lot of the pundits now are starting to look at the Rockets as, hey, this is a team that we were laughing about a couple of seasons ago, even earlier this season, and now look at the turnaround that they had. So it's really catching on, and a lot of the fans within the city, you can see that there's a change in the air. It's like more people are now talking about the Rockets than they were before, and every city likes a winner. So winning attracts more fans. And that's just how it goes. There's more bandwagon fans than people want to give credit to, but that's what they're. It's true.
Especially in Houston, that's just the way it is. Because I think CJ Stroud, from the quarterback for the Texans, put it best. There is so much to do in Houston. You've got to give people a reason to come to the games, to watch on TV. If you don't give them a reason, they're not going to, because there is just so much to do in the city of Houston.
Yeah, I remember I would hear the Rockets would be running specials. Hey, get to the game before 7:30, $1 beers, or $1 hot dogs, because they were able to put, people just did not want to get there on time, and especially with traffic in the city, a big city like Houston, fourth number city, it's just not going to happen, So now they're not even having to do those kind of promotions, because the winning speaks for itself. People want to be involved. People want to see. So, this is just going to bring in more fans later down the season, and into next season.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely, you can see it, but like, especially like during the NBA Cup, like when they show those games on national TV, sold out. We hadn't seen Toyota Center sold out in years, but the house packed. Like, I couldn't even find decent price tickets to go to the game. But that's how packed it was. Years past, you can find cheap tickets to, like, it's like when the Astros are losing 100 games a year. Tickets were $5. You could bring your own food, your own beverage into the stadium.
Oh
And
yeah.
sellouts. Ticket prices are going up, but hey, that's what winning does. It brings more eyes to you. And speaking of eyes, just if you have a Twitter account or Instagram account and you follow the NBA and like some of the NBA affiliates, you see a lot of love being shown to Amen Thompson. Like this guy is really starting to emerge
Yes.
as like a true, you know, like a true cornerstone of the franchise,
Hmm.
which we really haven't seen in quite some time, especially from the national media. The Houston media, they obviously they focus on their own, but like seeing it from the national media, it's a little surprising to be honest with you. Like I've seen some of the headlines here and there for Sengun, but it hasn't been the same levels they've shown for Amen Thompson. But rightfully so, like he is really emerging as like almost a steal, which is kind of funny to say. Him being a number 4, a lottery pick essentially at number 4, he's looking like the second best player in that draft. And this is the draft class that had Wembanyama, and the way
Hmm.
that Amen Thompson is playing, like his name is being put out there a little bit more on a national level than Wembanyama is at the moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of the talking heads, within the NBA sphere universe environment, there are a lot of older players.
You can say it,
So
old
when they
heads.
look, yeah,
Like the kids
so
say,
when you see a person, so when you see a person like Amen Thompson playing, not just on the offense but on the defense, like that really resonates with those older players because that's how it was when they were playing. Like, hey, we were playing hard every day. Every game was not easy game. It was a fight. Every game was a fight. Even if there was a blowout, that someone was getting injured because it was just more rough back in those times. So
back in the
when
good
they
old
see
days.
someone when they see someone like this, like Amen Thompson, they just salivate at it. I just like a
It takes
rib
you
or something.
it takes you back to a different era, back to 90s style basketball. Guys played hard on both ends. Like looking back in the day, like guys like Michael Jordan played hard on both ends of the court. He won defensive player of the
Hmm.
year and MVP in the same season. You had guys like Hakeem winning, MVP and being perennial first team All Pro defense. Kobe Bryant, same thing. You don't really see that nowadays. Like these guys that make first team defense, they're not really the top scorers in the NBA. You don't really see a guy playing hard on both ends of the court. And as of late, it's a small sample size for sure, but he is really putting up numbers that that's really catching people's eyes and possible dark horse candidate for defensive player of the year. Just considering his
Cool.
size and the numbers he's putting up. He's putting up, I mean, not the same number of blocks as Wembanyama. Wembanyama is, 7'4". He's,
Yeah.
blocking point guards that are,
The walking stick.
but seeing, having a guy that's 6'7", basically he's a point guard, but he's more of a winger, averaging, double digit boards and almost 2 blocks.
Hmm.
You haven't really seen that in quite some time.
And he's doing it against teams, the top teams, the Cavaliers twice. They just, they also beat the Celtics.
We'll get to that
The second team, second leading team in the West, and
piece.
then sorry, in the East. But yeah, so these aren't just run of the mill teams. These are top teams. Boston is still the defending champions at the end of the day. So when they played them earlier in the season, it just didn't go their way. But this time, they were able to put it together. Amen Thompson came out. He really showed out, and he was one of the main contributors of why they were able to win that game against the top team, one of the top teams in the West East. Sorry.
Right. No, you're good. Yeah, let's go a little bit over that boxing game because that was a pretty exciting game. That was one that got a lot of attention, national wise, because you have, what the young Rockets team that's number 2 in the West. You got the Boston Celtics who are on a bit of a hot run right now. They're also number 2 in the East, defending
Mhm.
NBA champions. A lot of eyes were on this game, and it lived up to the hype. This one came down to the wire, but Houston was able to pull it out at the end. They ended up winning 114-112 with Amen Thompson hitting the game-winning shot. The first one of his entire career.
Yes.
He was pretty ecstatic after the game. When they interviewed him after, he's like, I felt like Kobe Bryant. This is for our first ever game winner. I mean, that's as a kid, where you shoot, ball, you shoot paper into a basket, screaming Kobe.
Oh yeah.
this guy got national TV. So it was gotta be a really exciting moment for him, especially because he has struggled a little bit, early on in his career, with his jumper, but he was able to hit one over Jalen Brown, who is no slouch on defense on his right,
Yes.
and he was also Boston's leading scorer. But it was from a NBA fan standpoint, it was good seeing this young kid emerge, and like you see the transitions, like you've seen it with other guys before. When Kobe Bryant was first drafted, no one really knew what he would be. But
Oh
then
yeah,
you saw
definitely.
little by little pieces here and there, games here by there. He started putting it together, and then he became, top 5 player all time. And I'm old enough to remember watching him get drafted and watching his entire career. And I'm saying, Amen Thompson's at that level, but we've seen the pieces, bits and bits here and there that he's starting to put it together. And if he could put it together, improve his handles, improve his jump shot, you're looking at a complete NBA player.
One of the things that I was thinking about, that Amen Thompson took that last shot, it shows the trust that the Rockets have in him to take that shot.
Yeah.
Just to put him in that position. And so that tells you, that should already tell you that's a future star right there. Because no one just gets the last shot. The star on the team is going to get the last shot every time.
Mm-hmm.
But the Rockets had enough, faith in him that he would. How you doing? Had enough faith in him that they would give him the last shot. So, and then for him to hit that, it's just the man, just put the man on the Rocket right now, because that's where he's going right now. No pun intended.
Right. No, let's go over some of the stats from that game. So the top scorer was actually Dylan the Villain Brooks. He had a season high 36 points. Like, he really showed out. This was a game where typically when both Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun struggle, the Rockets typically lose. But you saw guys coming off the bench, and Dylan Brooks and Amen Thompson really putting up numbers. So Dylan Brooks had 36 points. He also had. He didn't really fill the stat sheet, but he did play defense. Those things don't really show up in box scores. But he was the main guy guarding Jason Tatum, and Tatum, had a really bad night shooting the ball. And that's what you want from him. Like, he does the things that don't show up on the stat sheet. He does the little things. He does the dirty work that most guys don't want to do in the NBA. But he's the leading scorer. And behind him was, besides hitting the game-winning shot, Amen also had 33 points. He had a block, a steal, and 9 rebounds. So he had a complete game on both ends of the court.
The thing about Dylan Brooks, like you were saying, a lot of the things that he does is not going to show up on the stat sheet. But when he's on him hitting threes, the man's pretty much automatic. It's kind of one of those, I just got to get one in, and once I get that first one in, you kind of feel the stroke. So that's kind of what he was feeling that game. It's like, hey, you know what? He got the first one, he break a second one, and look at him, 36 points. And he's like the Rockets version of Draymond Green. He gets dirty. He gets in there. And he jaws around. I mean, he just got fined for $25,000, for making a comment. So, but that's what he does. That's what he's there for. Every team needs a defensive player that's going to get nasty, get in there in the trenches, and really fight it out. Because there's not really too many players like that. And when you have that type of player, he really can affect how the other team is playing.
He gets in your head.
Because yeah, definitely. That's kind of what Draymond does. He gets he does a lot of things to distract the players.
Under your skin, like you just
he's like the Dennis Rodman, like the modern Dennis Rodman. But Dylan Brooks is kind of taking that from the team. He knows, hey, this is what they brought me in. They brought him for. So, I'm going to be that villain. I don't care if anybody likes me, but I know the town's going to like me. So that's the approach he took. Hey, and look at him now. Look at the Rockets are, reaping the rewards of what he's sowing right now in the NBA. So it's just all season. He's in there all season, and it's just gonna keep on happening. So we could only see what's gonna happen in the future games, and like him just continue to hammer lock down. And he also on the defensive side, he emits that to the other, to the other players on the team. So maybe he's, Amen Thompson is taking that from him too. Like, hey, you know what? Let me lock down too.
Yeah, you
So,
saw it against
it can change. Yeah,
Miami.
it could change the culture of the team. It could, it could really change the culture of the team. So you're kind of seeing kind of like what's going on and what's cooking in there. So, I'm sure the Rockets are excited for what's going to happen down the season.
Yeah, Dylan Brooks is one of those guys that you hate him if he's on the other team, but you love him if he's on your team. Like I've seen it throughout my life, like you're watching the basketball. Like there's always been that one guy on the opposing team where like you just can't detest every ounce of their being. But if they were on your team, like we need a guy like that, and he feels it all because he does the dirty work. He like former Rockets like Mario Elie, he would do same things. Play mind games with people, do the he was called the junkie.
Maxwell.
He was doing, stuff like that. Vernon Maxwell. They've had a lot of guys over the years that fill that role, and he's filling that role as well. And like I said, like the team feeds off that energy. Like he'll get in the guy's face and he'll let him know, like, hey, man, I did that. Like you're not going to score on me. And like guys like him and Terry Eason, they feed off of that because you see them. They're very similar on the defensive end. Like they'll get in guys' faces. Like like I mentioned earlier, Amen Thompson threw Tyler Hero into the shadow realm.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that was terrible. That was I mean, he just
like, he was wrong. They were like, he was, because he was cooking. Like he was not cooking him. He scored maybe 6 points on him. He wasn't the main person guarding him. But hey, you know what? Sometimes you gotta take the suspension, take a fine, whatever. But it's on a message like, hey, I'm here. You're not gonna punk me around. Exactly. You're not gonna get in my face and say what you want to me. And he's really set this game up since that moment. He's been a completely different player. I think like that moment, like really like unlocked something in him, and we've been seeing it over the last week. He's averaging over 20 points, over 10 boards. He's averaging a couple blocks a game. Like he's really elevated his game, which you were watching him his rookie season. You're like, it was a mixed bag because he was a little bit raw. He was 19 years old. He's didn't play very long in the Ignite League, and you're like, maybe it'll take some time to develop, but he's really taking strides. I would say his development is a little bit faster than we saw from Jalen Green. Jalen Green took till now to like really elevate his game. We're seeing in year 2 from Amen Thompson.
That just shows they just give credit to his work ethic. There's some players who want to put in the work, and they talk about it, but there's some players who talk about it and they actually show you, hey, look what I'm doing here, night in and night out. This is not just a, one game fluke because, that some players have, there's some players you never heard of that go off of 40 points. Like, hey, who's this guy? Next game, 2 points, stat sheets looking a 0 everywhere else. So he's really showing that, hey, I'm not a fluke. This is that one game fluke. I'm really here. I'm putting in the time. The coaches, it's also, give credit to the coaches, for coaching them through, letting them know, hey, work on this, work on that, but especially in season, it's hard to really practice within the season because there's so many games. So you're just seeing his progression and all the work that he's putting in, and the coaches as well. And look at him now. Look, he's like, hey, I'm here, and I'm here to ball. Let's do it.
Yeah, and like I said, Rockets had a very short turnaround. They played, Friday, and then played a couple days later, and they played the Atlanta Hawks the other day. Now that game, you could kind of tell like they were a little bit tired. They came out with, if you ever played basketball before, you come out with what we call dead legs. Like your legs, you just don't have to. Any type of movement because you're tired. And these guys play a lot of games, week after week, and you could kind of tell seeing in the first quarter, like they were, a little bit sluggish. They got outscored towards the end of the first quarter, and Atlanta looked like they might, run away with it. But the Rockets really locked down in the second, third, and fourth quarter, and they really like put the clamps down, and they were able to come away with a victory. They won that game 100-96. Again, let's score for you. Like they were in control of the game after the first quarter. So some of the top guys for that game was Jalen Green again. He had 25 points and 7 rebounds. But not just that, the way he dropped Larry Nance Jr., man.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching the game. I was like, oh.
Nasty.
It was just, that man had a family.
He didn't have ankle insurance, I'll tell you that.
But yeah, he had a pretty good game, and Sengun had a good game as well. He had a double double with 18 points and 10 boards. And contributing off the bench was Jason Tate. He's been a little bit up and down the last couple seasons. He has some moments where he will not show up at all on the stat sheet, and games where he will actually step up. And this is one of those games where they didn't need him to step up because the other guys were struggling a little bit from the floor. And he contributed 16 points off the bench, which is huge. If you can get 16 points from anyone on your bench, you typically win games like that, unless you have someone on the other side of the scores like 70. But usually, if you have a bench score that's not super high in the rotation, scoring 16, typically it means you're going to pull off the win.
The Rockets could take that all day. Any team would take that all day. Like you're saying, any non-bench, bench player don't get too much time. Just like Jason Tate. Unfortunately, his time just not a lot. But those contributions, when you do see it, he had 25 minutes. So that means Udoka was looking at him saying, "Hey, you know what? He's giving us the best chance right now. He's putting up these points. Let me play him a little longer." And so that's something when it comes down to coaching, what you really see what the coach is made of, because it's a chess match. What moves are you going to make here and there to win the game? So some people will take a hot guy out. Hey, you play too many minutes, especially with this. People rest nowadays in this league, but it's different whenever you're able to see it and put it together. You know what? I got to make this move for the betterment of the team so we can win. And Udoka did that. He's like, hey, you know what? Jason Tate is giving us that best chance to win right now. So the Rockets are taking advantage of these players that are stepping up, and it's just something that's been happening all season. Someone's always there to lift them up, in the time of need, and help carry them to that victory. So it's just a plus, and it's something that I hope we can keep seeing the Rockets do, and the players continue to step up.
Yeah, teams that want to contend for championships, you got to get contributors from the bench. If you look at some of the teams from the past that have won the NBA Finals, they got contributions for guys you normally wouldn't expect, like with the Celtics last season with Derek White. Not a guy a lot of people had on the radar to begin the season, but he was a key contributor for that team. When the Denver Nuggets won it, but with Brown, he was the glue guy. He was kind of the role as Dylan Brooks. He was a key contributor to that team. Like, these are guys that normally, you don't really expect to be like that integral to a team, but come playoff time when these guys are tired, you got to find contributions where you can, and that's what you need to be a team that's going to contend for not just for the current, but for the years to come. Getting production from your bench. Can't always rely on your superstars because they're human. They're going to have off games. But if you can have guys that come out of nowhere and give you key minutes, give you key points, boards, steals, rebounds, whatever they may be, whatever they got to do to help you win, and you get that from deep in your bench, your team's going to be the better for it. And speaking of, being given your all, something I do want to shout out was Jalen Green. He has played 150 straight games. Guy hasn't missed a game.
A workhorse.
Which, again, like you mentioned, a lot of guys, load management or injuries. He's played every game this season. So has Sengun. Sengun has struggled a little bit with injuries. He's played all 46, just like with Jalen Green. And having both those guys on the court is very integral to the Rockets' success.
Definitely.
And them playing all 46 so far has been, a big boon for this team. But again, kudos to Jalen Green. 150 straight games. You don't really see that. I can't think off the top of my head any player right now that's even close to that number. Just a workhorse. And
a lot of stars.
He's pretty undersized that too.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of stars are taking off. Hey, this is what the league has become now. Load management. We need these stars for later in the season. It's disheartening to see because the season used to matter, and now it's like the season doesn't even start until after Christmas.
Really.
Well, yeah, but usually it's like Christmas is like the big Christmas NBA special game, and so from there, that's kind of when you're like, you know what, that's when everyone starts watching because the NFL starts winding down. But in the 90s, it was different. Everyone, Jordan, he had the big names. They were actually marketing a lot of the players. They're not really doing that
Yeah.
as well now, but
Jordan played all 82 multiple times in his career, and he didn't take a
yeah.
night off. Like, you
And
never
so
see
it's just go ahead.
Yeah, those were the good old days. And I think I forgot which player touched on it. It's on the top of my head. It'll come to me later, but he's like, these guys come out to see me every night, so I want to make sure one, I'm available, and two, I'm gonna put on a show because these
Oh,
fans, they spend their hard-earned money to bring their families to these games, which is not cheap, by the way. And
actually,
you come to the game, and then your favorite player is, load managing, taking them off. Like really? Like, as a
it,
kid growing up in the 90s, like if I went to a game, like my parents took me to a game, I was expecting, the best players to play, and they would play. They wouldn't. There was no load management back then. There's one thing if they're injured, but like, this load management, I'm just not a fan of it. And for one, I'm kind of glad the NBA kind of put a little stipulation. Hey, you want to win these top awards, you need to play at least 65 games, which is good chunk of the season.
yeah. And getting back to Green, that just the man conditions himself and takes care of himself and his body, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be playing 152 games straight. It's just tough. This game, is hard on your knee. It's just hard on your body in general. You're taking bumps, you're taking falls. Your ankles are pretty much done. Everything in your body is just aching. Like, I cannot continue to go further because the season just drags on. You're playing back to backs. You're in one city one night, another city the other. So it just really taxing on the body. But again, like you're saying, kudos, 152 game. That's no slouch numbers you know, to whiff at. So it's just like, I hope we can see other players in the NBA, start to see kind of, produce the same production as far as playing the game, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but get in there, show your team and show the city that, hey, I'm here, I can play, let me do something to contribute rather than just sit back. I can play next game, it's no problem, no sweat, you're just on the bench. And the cameras are on you. If you're a star, the cameras are always on you. They're looking at you when someone scores, they're seeing if you're cheering for your own teammate, they're seeing everything, so it's tough. It's tough to see, but I hope that it starts a trend, that players are playing more games and not resting, because every game is important. Maybe there needs to be some changes, but within the NBA. But again, every game should be important for everyone. So that's where I hope it trends, but it's only to be seen.
Right, to be determined. All right, so the next game that the Rockets play is going to be against the number 3 seed in the West, the Memphis Grizzlies, who are they're 4-5 in their last matchups. They're one of the best home teams in the entire NBA right now. At home right now, they're 19-5. They're one of the best, like I said, best home teams. But the Rockets are one of the best road teams in the league. They are 17-6. They're actually a little bit better on the road than at home, which you typically don't see that often in
No.
the NBA. Typically, teams play much better at home, but the Rockets, they play a little bit better on the road. So this is an interesting matchup because you have two hot teams coming on win streaks. They're both, they're good on both ends of the court. They both
Hmm.
have, they both have superstars. With the Grizzlies, they have John Morant, who's, when he's healthy, he's one of the
Of
best.
course.
He's must see TV. And with the Rockets, you have a
Hmm.
star in Amen Thompson. You have Sengun and Jalen Green, and they both have pretty deep benches where they can give you points and decent production to help you win games. So what are your predictions for this game?
For this game, I think it's been to be a close game. Looking at the past two games that they played, the Rockets have come on top, but it was not by much. One was by 4, the other one was by 2. So I expect this game to be close again, come down to the wire. Uh, I'm going to go and take the Rockets on this one just because they've been able to, get those extra points at the end of the game and take over and win the game at the end. So that's kind of where I'm trending to, just because the Rockets play hard against this team. I think they live up some teams play down to their competition. I think the Rockets just play above and beyond, especially right now the way they're they're trending, beating top teams. So again, the way the Rockets are performing right now, I would hope to see them, win this one as well. I don't think it's going to be by a big margin as well.
No, I agree. They played each other. They've matched up very well. Like there's certain teams that certain teams match up well against. I think the Rockets and Grizzlies match up very well because they both play very hard on the defensive end of the court, and they can put up. They can light up the scoreboard as well. It's going to be a close one, just like the last two matchups have been. But I'm going to give the slight edge to the Grizzlies. I think the Rockets have played a lot of games in the last few days, and they haven't played. They played the top two teams in the East, and then the Hawks are, by all means and measures are, getting much better as the season progresses. So I think that, they're a little bit tired. Memphis is playing. They're very good at home. I'll give them the slight edge, but again, it's going to be, very, very close score. It's probably going to be at least probably 1, 2, maybe 2 possessions, but it's going to be close.
I didn't even think about. I totally forgot about the multiple games, but the Rockets will probably that's a lot of games. It's a lot of top teams. I can see where you're giving the edge to the Memphis, and I might agree a little bit, but I think I can see the Rockets gritting out one of these games, like just digging it out.
Oh yeah, it can go either way.
So it's I mean, it could be a toss-up. This game could be a toss-up. It can go both either way. Just because you're saying they're just that close, especially matchup wise. So, there's like you were saying, 1 or 2 possessions is pretty much, I think, also what it would come down to.
Gotcha. Well, that's all the time we got for this week, guys. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you follow us on YouTube at In the Paint Cast. Same name on Twitter. I'm not gonna call it X. It's Twitter. It's gonna remain Twitter. That's going to be it for me this week. You got any final thoughts, Mario? Don't forget to follow Areskina as well on Instagram. Their Instagram is Areskina. And on X, same name, Areskina. They produce great content. If you want, you have great articles, great content, great podcasts covering baseball. We cover basketball. We also cover football, what's left of it for the last, last with Bring on the Blitz. But yeah, any final thoughts, Mario?
You know what? I just want to continue to see Amen Thompson, climb that hill. And so when we're on again next week, I want to be able to, just be excited. Like, what? This is it. We finally have our star. James Harden left the team. He left the city and he just left us hanging. I mean, sorry, he left the city hanging. And, it'll be good to see the Rockets have a star again, a real true star. That will put them on a national level, and other cities and other teams will be able to see them, on the nationally televised games.
Yeah, living in Houston, it's nice to see the city filled with energy surrounding the local teams. That energy has been up and down over the years, just because of the different levels of performance. Just from a casual standpoint, being able to witness that energy is great to see, and hopefully it continues. But yeah, that's all we got for this week, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. Y'all take it easy.